Hello everyone, my presentation is on feedback, coaching, disciplining, and terminating staff. So the topics we'll be discussing is what is feedback and how it should be given, what is coaching and what is necessary for it to be effective, different types of coaching, the differences between coaching and feedback, how to effectively discipline, and the process of termination. So when we give feedback, feedback should be a daily process that improves performance. Feedback can be given or received by peers, colleagues, patients, so it basically can apply to everyone. Feedback can be uncomfortable to give or sometimes to receive, but feedback should be both positive and negative. And when giving feedback, it's important to discuss why things are happening and not just what is happening. So we want to understand why these problems are occurring. When we give feedback, we want to make sure that feedback is given close to the event when it's occurring, after it occurs, but close to the event. And we want to make sure that it's given frequently, so on the daily. Feedback should be both goal-focused and as well as give steps and instruction on how to improve. It should be constructive and positive, and it should be clear. When giving feedback, we want to make sure it's done in a private place, make sure we're using an appropriate tone of voice, and making sure we have leveled emotions. We don't want to be too angry or agitated. We want to make sure we're speaking clearly to the person without emotions getting in the way. And we also want to give time for the peer to be able to reflect on how they're feeling and what they think is going on. An article I found explained the WRAP acronym. So the W stands for wonder, giving the chance to reflect and identify strengths and weaknesses, reinforce these positive behaviors, and adjust areas that need improvement and why these things are happening, and then set forward plans and strategies to move forward. So in summary, it's important to know that we should be searching for feedback on the job all the time. Feedback can apply to everyone and is very, very important to receive. The next topic is coaching. So coaching is collaborative. It's a relationship that promotes development. It should be interactive, interpersonal, and goal-driven. And one of the skills that is important to have in coaching is being able to use open-ended questions and have meaningful conversation. Before starting to coach, you need to make sure that the person receiving the coaching is ready. Psychologically, this should not be counseling. This is not therapy. They need to be willing, open, interested, and motivated to receive this coaching, and they also need to be capable of change. Coaches and coaching can apply to anyone. It can be a peer, it could be a nurse, it could be a nurse manager. So there are many challenges in the workplace. Sometimes there's burnout, and when we use coaching, we can help improve these challenges. Coaching improves engagement and improves patient outcomes. Coaching also implements self-discovery and innovative thinking. One of the things that can stall the process of coaching is deeply held views. Next, we'll be discussing discipline. Discipline is when inappropriate behaviors must be corrected, and moving forward in how to correct these behaviors. It should be a progressive process that follows policy and procedures. It's important to know that discipline is a warning. It's not a punishment. When giving discipline, it's important to know that it should not be on a personal level. And when giving discipline, it should be consistent amongst all staff members and peers. We want to make sure we're documenting the process of the discipline, and discipline can be given in an oral form, formal verbal, or written. And another source notes that discipline can be hard to give. It's confrontational sometimes, and sometimes people may fear giving discipline to those of higher power. Before going through the process of discipline, we want to make sure we're coaching, and we also want to make sure we're using I statements. Okay, if we are receiving discipline or giving discipline, the steps for giving discipline, we want to make sure we're focusing on the facts. Are we following reasonable expectations? Are expectations higher than what's expected? We need to make sure we're all treating everyone equally. We need to make sure we're taking the time out and not acting when we're angry. We need to be consistent across the board for everyone. When we're giving discipline to a peer, we need to make sure we're ensuring privacy, as well as knowing, there's two sides of a story. So allow for the person to have a reflection and time to explain their side. Before things go further, they need to explain remediation, what might be done to move forward, as well as reflecting on the behavior that is occurring. And during this process, it's always important to document and file what the steps that have been taken are. And then after this process, we need to make sure that we're communicating back to human resources. And discipline can occur. It's important to know, how to give discipline if we are, a nurse manager, human resources, but it's also important to know this process on our side of things. If we are ever receiving discipline, it's important to know how we should be treated and what the steps that would be taken are. One of the last topics that will be discussed is termination. So termination is what ends employment. It has emotional consequences, legal consequences, and verbal consequences. So we want to make sure that when we're given termination that we're being objective, keeping emotion out of it. And before terminating a member, you need to make sure you reviewed the documentation, provided feedback to the person, and were consistent. You need to make sure that you provided remediation and coaching to this staff member. And also, you want to consider the challenging point of view. What is their point of view? Trying to understand it and how you can explain why termination is necessary at this point in time. You also need to make sure the supervisor and human resources are aware. So the process of termination, you need to make sure you're being firm, but also compassionate. It's a tough time. Make sure their privacy is maintained. When you're talking to the worker about the steps that led to termination, you should bring all the documentation forward and explain the steps you took to prevent termination, as well as the steps or remediation that was involved, or the steps that were not followed by the worker. You want to explain the process and follow procedures of the termination. And of course, you need to document the incident and the worker's reaction to their termination. And lastly, you need to follow up with human resources. Okay, so here's a video. This video I found interesting. It's on the GROW model. So this is one of the types of coaching that can be used at the workplace. Hopefully you're able to hear it properly. If not, I got it straight off of YouTube, and you can search this link here. This next video shows the process of discipline and termination. If you're unable to hear the video, the link is shown at the top of the screen that you can find it on YouTube.